All right, so today we're going to be taking a deep dive into truth,
Oh, yeah.
specifically using Dr. Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life.
That's right.
And
It's an interesting topic.
it is.
Yeah.
And I think what makes Peterson's approach so fascinating is that
Oh,
he doesn't just philosophize about truth.
right.
He brings
Because
in...
abstractly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He brings in his experiences as a clinical psychologist and all the situations that he's encountered.
Yeah. And very real situations with his patients.
Yes, and the stories are unbelievable.
Yeah.
You know,
Moral.
we've got a schizophrenic patient, we've got a paranoid client with some pretty
Intense fantasies.
interesting fantasies, let's just say that.
Yeah.
And even an encounter with his landlord, who was an ex-biker gang leader who
Who's trying to sell him a toaster?
was trying to sell him a toaster
In the middle of the night.
at like 2 a.m.
Yes.
So,
Crazy.
yeah, and so...
But through these anecdotes,
Mhm.
Peterson really shows how honesty plays out in these unexpected ways.
Yeah, and the consequences that can unfold.
Right.
So let's start with the story about the schizophrenic patient at the Douglas Hospital.
Okay.
Peterson was a young clinical student at the time, and this patient approached him and his classmates asking to join their group.
Oh, wow.
I can only imagine how delicate a situation like that must be.
Yeah, absolutely. And Peterson really wrestled with it.
Yeah.
On the one hand, he wants to be kind, but on the other hand,
Right.
he has to be honest.
So he chooses the direct approach
Yeah,
and just tells her, look, you can't join our group because we're just students.
straight up.
Yeah. And I was thinking, wouldn't that seem harsh?
Yeah,
Especially to someone who is already vulnerable?
you would think.
Yeah.
You would think.
How did that play out?
So what's fascinating is that the patient,
Okay.
she was hurt momentarily,
Yeah.
but she understood and accepted it.
And so Peterson reflects on this and suggests that this directness, this honesty, actually built a sense of trust and respect.
It's a good point, because I was thinking,
Yeah.
maybe sugarcoating things or trying to come up with some kind of excuse would have just felt condescending and almost manipulative in a way.
Right. It's like she can handle the truth.
Right, exactly.
Well-
And you're acknowledging her dignity and her capacity to understand.
Exactly. It suggests that honesty,
Yeah.
particularly with vulnerable individuals, is about recognizing their inherent worth,
Oh, yeah.
treating them as equals.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever found yourself in a situation where telling the truth, even though it was really hard, turned out to be like the best course of action?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like these little acts of honesty can have a ripple effect.
Absolutely. And that leads us to our next story,
Okay.
which involves a paranoid client.
Who had some rather intense, violent fantasies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now working with someone who sees the world through that lens of constant threat,
Yeah.
I imagine that's no easy feat.
Right. It's
Yeah.
like walking on eggshells, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Always wondering what might trigger their
Yeah.
paranoia.
Yeah, what might set them off?
Exactly. And because of this hypersensitivity to any perceived threat,
Yeah.
they are acutely aware of dishonesty.
Oh, interesting.
So Peterson quickly realized that honesty,
Okay.
even when expressing his own fear or disapproval, was the only way to build genuine rapport.
So he was up front with the client about
Is that how he felt?
hey, I'm actually kind of scared of you right now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Or I'm a little afraid of you.
That must have taken a lot of courage.
Yeah. And it's vulnerable.
Yeah. And maybe that vulnerability disarmed the client in a way.
That's a great observation.
Yeah.
And yes, Peterson's honesty, his willingness to be vulnerable, created a space for genuine connection.
Oh.
This brings us to a crucial insight. Okay.
Authenticity,
Yeah.
even when it feels risky, can be the key to building trust.
Especially with people who might be prone to suspicion or mistrust.
Exactly.
Yeah, it makes you think about how important it is to be genuine in all of our interactions, even if it means admitting to uncomfortable feelings.
Yeah.
Like, there's that saying,
Yeah.
people may not remember exactly what you said,
Right.
but they'll always remember how you made them feel.
Exactly.
And now let's get to this story about Peterson's landlord,
Oh, yeah.
Dennis,
This is a good one.
the ex-biker gang leader
Right.
with a penchant for late-night toaster sales,
Yes.
fueled by alcohol.
Yes, fueled by his struggles with alcohol.
2 a.m., knock in the door,
There he is.
and it's Dennis.
With a toaster?
Trying to sell him a toaster.
Yeah, it's like a scene out of a movie.
I know, it's crazy.
It's wild. So,
Yeah.
but what's striking about this anecdote,
Yeah.
beyond the colorful characters
Yeah.
and the, late night shenanigans.
Yeah, is that it illustrates how consistently upholding your values
Okay.
can lead to these unexpected positive outcomes.
So instead of, just giving in to social pressure or,
Or brushing him off.
brushing him off, being like, dude, it's 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Like, get out of here.
Right.
He
sticks to his principles.
Yeah.
He's like, Dennis,
yeah.
I'm not going to buy this toaster.
Yeah.
And I know you're trying to stay sober.
Right.
And giving you money is not going to help.
And it would have been so easy just to buy the damn toaster.
Right.
Just to avoid the confrontation.
Totally. But he chose to act in accordance with his values.
Yeah.
Even in a situation that, could have gone sideways.
Totally.
Easily.
And get this.
Not only did Dennis respect his stance,
Really?
but he never tried to sell him anything again.
What?
Yeah, they actually formed a stronger bond
Wow.
because of that.
That's amazing.
It's like that honesty, even in this tricky situation, laid the groundwork for genuine connection and respect.
So it shows that honesty is not a weakness. It can actually be a strength.
For sure.
Even in the face of these cultural and social differences.
Exactly.
It makes you think about.
Yeah, what are your values?
Yeah.
How are you living them out in your everyday life?
It's a good reminder
Mm-hmm.
to think about what are those guiding principles that shape my choices and actions.
Right.
And sometimes staying true to those values means having those tough conversations.
Yeah,
Or making choices that might not be the most popular but ultimately feel right.
absolutely. And that leads us to a concept that Peterson calls life lies.
Life lies, okay.
Yeah, these are essentially ways we manipulate language to distort reality.
So it's not outright lying.
Right.
It's more like
It's a subtle twisting of the truth,
I see, okay.
often to get what we want.
Yeah.
Or to avoid uncomfortable truths.
Okay.
And these life lies can be very alluring. They're often disguised as, motivational slogans.
Like
I'll retire at 52.
okay.
Or the world is out to get me.
Yeah, I've heard that one.
Right, but...
Or I'm going to win the lottery.
Right.
Is
This is my year.
But as Peterson points out,
Yeah.
these beliefs can easily morph into self-fulfilling prophecies
Oh.
that trap us in this distorted view of reality.
It's like we're building our lives on a foundation of sand.
Right.
Yeah.
It might look stable at first,
Yeah.
but it's ultimately unsustainable.
It's going to crumble.
And what's particularly interesting
Yeah.
is that these life lies often stem from a desire to avoid confronting difficult truths
Oh.
about ourselves or our circumstances.
That's so true, yeah.
It's like choosing the blue pill in the Matrix,
Right.
opting for the comfortable illusion
Yeah.
over the potentially painful reality.
But as Morpheus says, there's a difference between knowing the path
Right.
and walking the path.
That's right. So how do we break free from these life lies and start living in truth?
That's the question.
Yeah.
That's a great question.
Yeah, what are some practical steps?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that we'll explore further
Okay.
as we delve deeper into Peterson's insights.
Okay.
But for now, I think it's important to simply become aware of these patterns of self-deception.
Okay, so just start noticing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just start noticing those moments when we're tempted to twist the truth
Yeah.
or to avoid confronting a difficult situation, honestly.
Okay, so that self-awareness is key.
Self-awareness is key.
We'll continue this conversation in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good.
We'll be right back.
All right.
Welcome back. We're continuing our exploration in truth using insights from Dr. Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life.
And building on that last thought about life lies,
Yeah.
Peterson takes this idea even further.
Okay.
He doesn't just warn us about the pitfalls of these self-deceptions.
Right.
He actually presents a powerful argument for why consistently telling the truth, even when it's difficult, can lead to a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's not just about, avoiding those negative consequences.
Right. It's not just about, being punished or,
Right.
getting caught in a lie.
Right. It's more...
It's about cultivating a stronger character
Mm-hmm.
and becoming more resilient in the face of life's challenges.
So how does that work exactly? Is it just about being a good person?
It's deeper than that.
Okay.
Peterson suggests that when we confront difficult truths about ourselves,
Okay.
about our shortcomings or mistakes,
Mhm.
we're forced to grapple with our limitations.
Yeah.
This can be a painful process,
Right.
but it's in that struggle
Okay.
that we have the opportunity to grow.
So it's kind of like that idea, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Right.
But in this case, it's facing truth that strengthens us.
Exactly. And that process of growth through truth isn't just a Petersonian idea.
Right.
It resonates with the thinking of other prominent figures like Viktor Frankl,
Oh, yeah.
who wrote about finding meaning in suffering, even in the unimaginable horrors of a concentration camp.
Wow. So you're saying that even in those, like, darkest of circumstances,
Right.
there's still this potential for growth.
Exactly. And I guess it makes sense when you've stared down such immense suffering.
Yeah.
Those little white lies that we tell ourselves in everyday life seem to pale in comparison.
Totally. And we also see similar themes in the works of Alexander Solzhenitsyn,
Absolutely.
who bravely exposed the lies and atrocities of the Soviet regime in his book, The Gulag Archipelago.
Right. And both Frankl and Solzhenitsyn witnessed firsthand the devastating consequences of suppressing truth, both on an individual and a societal level.
And yet they also found that the human spirit can be incredibly resilient, especially when it's anchored in truth.
For sure. It's like having that bedrock foundation that can weather any storm.
Yeah, I like that. And speaking of resilience, Peterson shares a moving anecdote about a friend who went through a deep depression, but ultimately found renewal and transformation.
Wow.
By confronting his own truth. So instead of trying to pretend everything was okay or avoid the pain,
Right.
he actually faced it head on.
He leaned into it.
Yeah, and in doing so, discovered a new sense of purpose and strength.
That's powerful.
That's such a powerful reminder that truth, even though it can be painful, can also be incredibly healing.
Yeah.
It's like, facing a wound, cleaning it out, and allowing it to heal properly, rather than just covering it up and hoping it goes away.
Right, like ignoring it doesn't make it go away.
Exactly. Yeah, and that brings us to the flip side of truth.
Okay.
The danger of lies and what Peterson calls willful blindness.
Right.
And he argues very convincingly that lies, even those seemingly small ones, could have a corrosive effect not only on individuals but on society as a whole.
Absolutely. It's like that saying, a single lie destroys an entire reputation.
I like that. Yeah, it's like these seemingly insignificant deceptions can add up over time and create this culture of distrust.
He uses a clever analogy of a magnum of champagne.
Oh, I like that.
To describe how lies can spread.
Okay, how's that work?
So you pop the cork.
Yeah.
And at first it seems like a small thing, right? A few bubbles here and there.
Yeah.
But then it quickly explodes. And before you know it, it's everywhere.
It's like that thing, oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive.
Right.
Yeah, it starts with one little fib and then another, and then
before you know it,
you're just caught in this web of deceit.
You're drowning in it.
Right. And the thing about lies is that they often start small, almost unnoticeable.
Yes.
But over time, they compound.
They do.
They distort our perceptions. And they can even lead to behaviors that we never would have imagined ourselves doing.
It's like the analogy of the frog in boiling water.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that one.
If you throw a frog in a pot of boiling water, it will jump out immediately.
Right.
But if you gradually heat the water, the frog won't notice the change until it's too late.
It's a chilling metaphor for how we can just become so desensitized to these lies.
Right, especially when they're presented gradually or subtly.
And that's where this willful blindness comes in.
Yeah.
It's like we're choosing to ignore the warning signs, to pretend that the water isn't getting hotter, even as the evidence mounts around us.
Right. It's like we're choosing to stay in that pot.
Exactly.
Even though we know we should jump out.
So how do we guard against this tendency? Are there any red flags that we can watch out for?
That's an excellent question.
Yeah.
And one that we'll explore further in the next segment.
Okay.
But for now, I think it's crucial to recognize that willful blindness often stems from a desire to protect ourselves from uncomfortable truths. It's easier to look away, to pretend the problem doesn't exist, than to face it head on.
Right. It's so much easier just to avoid it.
Right. But as Peterson reminds us, ignoring a problem rarely makes it go away. In fact, it often makes it worse.
And you mentioned earlier how this can impact not just individuals, but society as a whole. Yes. Can you elaborate on that? How does this play out on a larger scale? We were just talking about how willful blindness can impact not just individuals, but societies as a whole.
Yeah. It's a scary thought.
It is.
Yeah.
It really is.
And Peterson points to some pretty stark examples, like, the rise of totalitarian regimes.
Oh, yeah.
Like Nazi Germany or Stalinist Russia.
Right.
As these cautionary tales of what can happen when lies and propaganda are allowed to take root and flourish.
It's chilling to think about how entire populations were manipulated and controlled through systematic deception.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder how people could be so easily swayed to just turn a blind eye to such atrocities.
It's like a complex phenomenon.
Yeah.
But one contributing factor is this idea of gradual desensitization.
Okay, like the frog in boiling water.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When lies are introduced slowly, incrementally,
Right.
it becomes easier to accept them as truth, especially when those lies are presented by figures of authority
Right.
or reinforced by a prevailing social narrative.
So it's like a slow erosion of critical thinking,
Yeah.
a willingness to just accept what we're told without questioning it. It makes me think about how important it is to cultivate a healthy skepticism,
Right.
to be willing to challenge those narratives that we've come to accept as truth.
Absolutely. That's a crucial point. And Peterson emphasizes the importance of critical thinking,
Okay.
being willing to question what we're told, and being willing to stand up for truth even when it's unpopular or dangerous.
Wow.
It's about recognizing that blind obedience can lead to disastrous consequences.
And to bring this back to the individual level,
Okay.
Peterson argues that the lies we tell ourselves, those little life lies that we
Yeah.
discussed earlier, they can actually contribute to the larger lies that permeate society.
Yeah, it's like a domino effect.
It is. Yeah.
He suggests that when we become comfortable with dishonesty in our own lives,
Yeah.
even in these seemingly small ways, it becomes easier to tolerate and even accept dishonesty in others.
Right. We're lowering the bar for what's acceptable.
Exactly. It's like we're lowering the bar
Yeah.
for what we consider acceptable behavior, which can have a ripple effect throughout society.
It's like that saying, integrity is doing the right thing even when no one is watching. But if we're constantly compromising our own integrity, even in these little ways,
Right.
it becomes easier to turn a blind eye to the larger injustices happening around us.
And that erosion of personal integrity can create a culture where truth is devalued, where deceit is seen as a necessary tool for survival or success.
Wow.
It becomes a vicious cycle.
It does.
That can be hard to break.
So how do we break free from this cycle?
Yeah, that's the question.
Peterson offers some practical advice, but before we get into that,
Okay.
I wanted to touch on that ancient Egyptian myth that he uses to illustrate these concepts.
Oh, yeah.
You mentioned it earlier.
Yes, the myth of Osiris, Set, and Horus.
Okay, so for those of us who aren't mythology experts, can you give us a quick rundown
Of course.
of the story?
So Osiris represents tradition and order, while his brother Set represents chaos and deceit,
Okay.
driven by envy and a thirst for power.
Oh.
Set tricks and murders Osiris,
Oh, no.
dismembers his body,
Jeez.
and scatters the pieces throughout the kingdom.
That sounds pretty brutal.
Yeah, it's a rough story.
So what happens next?
While Osiris's wife, Isis, and their son, Horus,
Okay.
they embark on this quest to find and reassemble Osiris's body.
Okay.
Horus eventually confronts Set, defeats him in a series of battles,
Oh.
and restores his father to life, albeit in a different form.
Okay, so how does this ancient myth connect to our modern-day struggles with truth?
Well, it's a powerful allegory for the fragility of truth, and this constant struggle between order and chaos, honesty and deceit.
Right.
Set's deception and violence disrupt the established order, plunging the world into chaos.
Okay.
It takes the courage and determination of Horus
Right.
to restore balance and bring truth back to light.
It's like saying that every generation has to grapple with these forces of chaos and order, truth, and deception.
Exactly. It's a timeless battle.
Yeah.
And what's crucial is that we don't become complacent like Osiris in the myth.
Right.
We need to be vigilant like Horus
Okay.
and constantly strive to see the truth, even when it challenges our existing beliefs.
Right.
It's about having the courage to question the status quo, to challenge those narratives that have become so ingrained that we don't even realize we're accepting them blindly.
And you mentioned that Peterson offers some practical advice on how to live in truth.
Yeah.
What are some steps that we can take to cultivate that commitment to honesty in our daily lives?
Well, he suggests starting small.
Okay.
Pay attention to those little lies that we tell ourselves and others.
Okay.
Become aware of those moments when we're tempted to shade the truth,
Yeah.
to exaggerate, or to simply avoid addressing a difficult situation, honestly.
So it sounds like self-awareness is key.
Self-awareness is key.
Yeah.
We need to be able to honestly assess our own thoughts and actions, to identify those patterns of dishonesty.
Okay, and once we start to recognize those patterns.
Right. Then we can make different choices.
Yeah.
We can choose to speak up when something feels wrong.
Mm-hmm.
We can choose to admit when we've made a mistake.
Okay.
We can choose to have those tough conversations instead of sweeping things under the rug.
So it's about making those small, conscious choices to align our actions with our values,
Exactly.
even when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient.
Even when it's hard.
Right.
And those seemingly minor choices can have a ripple effect, creating a more honest and authentic life, not just for ourselves, but for those around us.
It's like becoming the kind of person who can look themselves in the mirror and say, I'm doing my best to live in truth.
Yeah.
And that, in turn, can inspire others to do the same. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the power of truth, I think it's worth reiterating Peterson's simple yet profound challenge.
What's that?
Tell the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least don't lie.
It's a powerful call to action.
It is.
An invitation to live a more conscious, intentional, and ultimately more meaningful life.
It's a reminder that truth matters not just in some abstract philosophical sense, but in our everyday lives, in our relationships, and in the world at large.
Absolutely.
It might not always be easy,
Right.
but it's a journey worth taking.
Absolutely. So until next time, keep seeking truth, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.